Tonight on the Online Wine Tasting Club, we meet a Brazilian who has built a hobbit house in Sussex. A cat sabotages our equipment.
But we're still waiting to see, and I've been speaking to other vineyards whether, even though cat has just moved the camera.
And Jamie is so impressed by his wine dirt, well, this happens.
Unfiltered.
You alright, mate? It's time to taste some of the most highly awarded English wines with the Adventurer series.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Adventurer series of the Online Wine Tasting Club. I hope you're all very happy. I hope you're all giving up having a laugh at my expense. This is why I'm not allowed out in vineyards anymore. So I don't know if I should drink this again because last time I drank this, I fell off.
You fell off.
But anyway, we might have a bit of a mix and match today. Alex is behind producing at the moment. I might come for a little bit, but we've got Lee because if Alex's shirt can't be here, we need a shirt replacement. He might know a little bit about wine as well, we hope. But there we go.
Wine? I thought we were talking about gin. No.
Are we?
Oh, what's English, isn't it? Gin?
Something
no.
like that.
Okay, well, wine will do.
Anyway, so it is English Wine Week starting today. So we thought we would take you on a little bit of tour of some really, really top-end English wines. English wine is really, really renowned for the sparkling wine. I think that's what we've made ourselves famous for in recent years. But we thought we'd have a little bit of a deeper dive into the still wines that we offer in the UK. So we finally got out to some vineyards, we got to see some people, some really cool stuff. And what I'm hoping for is we taste some fun wines tonight.
I think there's a very strong chance of that looking at the lineup. But yeah, I really like what you said there. England's made its name with sparkling wine. 72% of production is sparkling, which means, just hang on, 28 is still. But that still stuff, I think, is really innovative, exciting.
You can tell you did a lot of homeschooling, can't you? A lot of homeschooling.
The joke's on you. I wasn't schooled at all. But still wine, I think, is really innovative and exciting. And you use the word there, fun. As fun as an Alex Taylor shirt. Or is that something else?
Yeah.
Fun will do.
Put your notes in the chat. We can't say much today, can we? But what I really hope we get out from this, everyone has their own opinion and stuff, but I think English wine for a long time has had this little bit of a crux. People go, oh, that's pretty good for an English wine. That's not bad for something made in England. That Pinot Gris all right for an English one. What I'm hoping we can do tonight is we taste some really, really great wines from really great people that you go, that's just good, regardless of where it came from. But we got to get out, we got to see some people finally, we got out of our hole. I didn't fall off any benches at any point ever.
That was just a trick of the light.
Funny, yeah, it was.
It was just a trick of the light. He's not actually falling off the bench. It was just done with light and mirrors and alcohol.
But anyway, I'm going to pour some of this so we can taste it. We're going to go to a little video that tells us a little bit about English wine, what we're doing, and we've then got a little interview with Oxney because we got down there. So we'll, you want another glass? Oh, yeah, look at him.
I suppose we'd let Miss Taylor have one.
He's
very generous.
He's all right. But on that note, we should probably go to a little video and taste some rosé.
See you on the flip.
England's green and pleasant land is a sweet spot for so many crops. It's not too hot, not too cold, not too wet, not too dry. We rarely get tornadoes, droughts, cyclones, hailstones the size of small cars, extreme temperatures, cataclysmic flooding, basically none of the extreme weather events that blight so many countries. However, the wine world looks at England in a very different light. You see, there are two bands that run around the world, one in the north and one in the south. And if you're in that band, you are seen as a wine place. And, well, we aren't. And traditionally, that is why the UK made beer and spirits. Until very recently, you would not have called us a wine country at all. The Romans, of course, did bring some grapes over and try things out. They even planted as far north as Lincolnshire, but it was a real stop-start affair for the next few thousand years. Vikings destroyed the vineyards, the monks replanted, Normans brought their grapes over. Henry VIII got rid of the monks and their vineyards, but nothing really stuck. Yet still, the UK found itself at the heart of the global wine community. We were the biggest buyer of Bordeaux wines in the world, and we dominated the worlds of fortified wines like Port and Madeira. We certainly liked the stuff. And in the 17th century, we invented champagne. Well, kind of. Hear me out. In 1662, a chap called Christopher Merritt wrote down a scientific paper describing how fizzy wine was made. This was completely new to the world at the time. Now, it's hard to believe, but Dom Perignon, the monk known as the traditional inventor of champagne, didn't develop his technique until several years later. But Merritt only described it. The true inventors in this story were East End London publicans, who created sparkling wine entirely by mistake. What happened is that they would add sugar to barrels of wine to make them more palatable to local tastes. People would take the bottles home, and then the yeast tucked into the sugar and made the wine fizzy. But it was already well known that wine which continued to ferment and bottle would produce this gas, and that would pressurise the bottles because, well, the bottles would explode. However, an astonishingly strange coincidence occurred. You see, the French burnt wood to melt their glass and to make the bottles, while the English preferred to use their wood for making boats to fight the French, so instead made their glass by burning coal. That burns hotter and makes stronger glass, which didn't explode. Instead, you got delicious fizzy wine inside. Now that is all well and good, but our climate was still not even close to warm enough to make really good wine. The hotter you get, the more ripe and sweeter flavours grapes get. And England is not particularly hot. Enter global warming. This has had a dramatic effect on the English wine industry. Many of our summers now are as warm as Champagne and even Burgundy used to be just a few decades ago, and they can make wine. We've also got serious about winemaking, setting up high-tech wineries, labs, and training a whole new generation of winemakers with formal degrees. The results have been astonishing. Our Champagne competitors, well, still a little pricey, are staggeringly good and regularly win the top prizes in the most prestigious international wine competitions. But tonight, we're hoping to show off some still wines, and those have taken a bit longer to come of age. For still wines, you need to rely on the sugars the grapes themselves develop. And in a country that's cold, that's a huge risk. Back in the 1950s, Germans were doing a lot of research into creating grapes that were optimised for ripening in cooler conditions and to resisting diseases like mildew that come along when things are a bit damp. So naturally, that was where the pioneers of the English modern vineyard scene started looking. Ray Brock was arguably the founding father of the modern English wine industry. He imported more than 600 different types of grapes and planted them in Oxney, close to the North Downs, just to see what worked. His advice led to a proliferation of grapes planted like Seyval Blanc, Müller-Thurgau, Reichensteiner and Uxelrebe. These made wine, but much of it was a bit of an acquired taste, especially compared to the delicious, cheap New World wines coming in. The next big breakthrough was a group of people who saw the similarities between southern England with its beautiful chalk downs and Champagne, so took a punt on planting Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier, the three classic Champagne grapes. Nightimber planted these grapes in 1988, and their winemaker Sherry Spriggs was recently the very first woman and the first person from outside Champagne to become International Sparkling Winemaker of the Year. Planting those grapes was a huge gamble. Conventional wisdom says they would not get ripe enough, but this was a gamble that paid off handsomely. Seeing the success on the international stage of brands like Nightimber, Ridgeview, Chapel Down and Hambledon, the industry has accelerated like crazy. And while still small, the area of vineyards has pretty much tripled since the year 2000. We now make Champagne method wine, Prosecco method wine, white, rosé, red, orange, fortified, natural, organic, biodynamic, dessert, and even ice wines. It's hard to think of something we don't make. And there are now nearly 900 vineyards in the UK, covering around 3,500 hectares. Most of these are in the southeast of the country, as you'd expect, with the real hotspots being Hampshire, Sussex and Kent. But a huge number are now in East Anglia, with this region being seen as perhaps the most exciting area for making still wines. It can be a bit easy to get carried away by the success. It is still immensely expensive here and very marginal in many years. Last year we were hit by vicious late frosts, which meant we made far less wine. And this year, it has been an incredibly cold start to the year. However, the new scientific approach to winemaking has meant we're able to ride these out and still make sensational wines even when it gets tough. This year alone, there were 130 award-winning wines from England at the International Wine Challenge, and for such a young industry that is literally battling against the elements, That is an incredible achievement.
I started Oxney in 2012. We planted the first vines in 2012 with my partner Paul, who's out there driving a tractor at the moment. And as he does,
Boys
very
with their
good at that. Exactly. And so we planted the first field, which is just straight in front of us. And we planted with Pinot Meunier, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And then in 2018 I planted a lot. So overall now is 35 acres, just under 14 hectares, 57,000 vines, and it's Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, Sauvignon Blanc, and also something, a little bit of Pinot Précoce.
Okay, fantastic.
So it's exciting, you know. It's a dream come true, really.
And you've picked a hard path for yourself because you've chosen to make it organic. What does that mean for you out in the vineyard?
So in the vineyard, what it means is that we are, we don't use any herbicides, pesticides, very reduced chemicals. Our toolbox is very limited. So the two things, if you have a vineyard that's a problem, is weed control. So underneath the vines, you want to have a clean strip under the vines, and most people use glyphosate, which is supposedly, according to lawsuits happening in America, carcinogenic. So who wants to have that in their wine?
No.
And so what we do is instead we drive our little Fendt tractor, and on each side there is a little tool, and we kind of rough the ground up. And then the other thing is, of course, the disease management of the vines themselves. I mean, vines are like crazy, saying, they're waving all their arms in the air and they're saying, please come and catch us, here in England at least, give us a disease. And so the main problems we have in English vineyards are downy mildew, powdery mildew and botrytis. There are organic approaches to dealing with those diseases, and they're not as efficient as the regular chemical the conventional guys are using. But it's absolutely possible to control it, and it's absolutely 100% possible to have an organic vineyard in the UK. A lot of conventional vineyards say they say we would like to be more organic if we could, but here in England we can't. But that's not right. That's in the PR industry we used to call that bullshit. It is totally possible. You just have to be more diligent. You have to be more on it. You have to be really good at canopy management. You have to have a good site that allows a little bit of wind to come through, so everything is you can't have a very wet site, so you have to choose correctly. But when we talk about canopy management in terms of climate, we also talk about the fact that we try to take leaves away from the fruiting zone. When the grapes are starting to come towards harvest, we're in August, we're in September, we have morning dew. We don't want that morning dew to kind of sit on the grapes for very long. We want it to dry out in the little gentle breeze, in the sunshine. So we take some of the leaves away from the fruiting zone. And I feel that the sooner you do it, the thicker the skin is, and that helps you with botrytis. We had a low yield. We were hit by the frost. I mean, it was a crazy year, but yes, we had an amazing summer. So the vintage is an incredible vintage, very ripe. For the first time ever, we're going to make some red wine, which we're hoping to launch before Christmas. 100% Pinot Noir, sitting in barrels as we speak, doing its thing. And we have the Rosé, the 2020 Rosé, which also is gorgeous. And I actually think it's the best Rosé we've made.
Delicious fruit there.
Yeah, lots of red fruit, lots of strawberry, nice little perfume to it, and you've got a glass of wine in your glass. There's so many rosés out there that are going so light, and this overly elegant style that you pick it up and it's just, is there anything in there?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just, you've really got to try and get something on the nose. This has this beautiful richness. It jumps out of the glass at you. It's lovely.
So we call our Rosé for grown-ups. I mean, we and again, we are trying to make a proper wine. The field that's facing me is where we made our famous Chardonnay from. And
it was the first 20-point Chardonnay from England, wasn't it?
That's right.
Absolutely delicious.
Yeah, it was the best ever English wine. Ever.
Fantastic.
I know, thank you. It's brilliant, isn't it? And the grapes came from just across from where we're sitting now. It's a fun story about the Chardonnay, because that's also the Chardonnay the badger liked. So that's when we started our badger control program with electric netting everywhere, electric fencing, and he had 2 whole rows of that Chardonnay.
Oh my
so
goodness.
it was in very limited supply,
Yeah.
because I know you bought some and then you couldn't buy any more. And, so you could have had more had the badger not had it. Yeah. We are, last year we had actually an exciting moment where we used the first combine harvester for grapes in the UK.
Oh, really?
So there's a contractor that comes in and he harvests for you. And we did that for our still wines.
Yeah.
Because of course it is 50 metres from the winery. Put it into the winery, we stuck it in the press, and we left it for a few hours.
So you then pressed off, and then do you tend to use selected yeasts or native yeast or a bit of a mixture?
So what we're doing at the moment is, over the last few years, we have moved towards, for 2020 vintages, we were researching the different types of native yeast, starting to research the different types of native yeast, and also other selective yeast that we were buying in. So this is a combination.
Okay.
It's unfined, it's unfiltered.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, that whole bench just went down under me.
Oh my goodness.
I think you were...
That's going to be on the film.
That's going to be in the
There we
outtakes.
are.
So we've been experimenting with natural yeast from the vineyard, and also some other selective yeast we buy in. It's on us, it's on the tree, it's on the grapes, it's on the plants, it's everywhere. So it's about using, and of course that's the ultimate terroir, isn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You try not to kind of really, use anything brought in. So that's what we're on a little journey towards that.
So this is all good and suitable for vegans and everything as well.
It's vegan, it's organic.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And absolutely delicious.
Thank you so much.
If people want to come down and visit you, is that something that they can do? And
Definitely. We're sitting here in our little tourism hotspot. So we open on Saturdays in the season, May through September.
Kristen, thank you so much for your time. Do pop down to Oxney. It's a short drive into the beautiful countryside, and they've got some absolutely delicious wines. And we hope you guys are enjoying this back in the studio.
I think we should address first Mr. Taylor's terrible comments. Picking on grapes. I mean, picking them is fine. Picking on them is wholly unacceptable. Alex Taylor's views do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas of overall of the wine tasting club. So I'm informed.
Or anybody else in the wine industry.
No, or anybody, even himself. They don't even
himself,
reflect his
depending
own views.
how much Oxney he's had.
He just said words. We told him to record words, and that's exactly
Don't
what he
move
did.
the camera, mate.
But
You're not a cat.
But great varieties like Huxel, Raber, Save Blanc. There's been a big change since the 1970s in many ways. But there's new techniques. There's people understanding what the varieties can do, putting them where they should be. So you've got Devonport makes some great Huxel, Raber, Save Blanc. Save Blanc is now 5% of English plantings, a whole 5%. But there's some really
95% of something else.
Of other things. But that 5%
You've
is
had a maths
it will.
thing. I wanted a bit of maths.
Well, I don't do numbers. I'm not here for numbers. But anyway, Save Blanc can be really interesting and for still and sparkling. But we should just address that.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of vineyards out there that planted 15, 20 years ago when it was a little bit cooler, and those were safe varieties as people were getting into making wine. They knew they would get a yield, they knew they'd get some wine, they knew they'd get some grapes. And would it always make the best wine ever? Maybe, maybe not. But it was a safe move 20 years ago that they knew they'd get yield off it. But people are now doing really cool things with really cool grapes, and I think this is the joy of being in an area. You go into Europe and you can only grow this here. You're able to experiment and look like things.
I think one of the really great things about English wine is that we're not tied down. That actually English wine is really innovative because of that. So trying different varieties in different places, different rootstock. There's so much exploration of what is possible that's why it's so exciting.
But anyway, should we talk a little bit about what's in the glass?
It's great, isn't it?
It's fantastic. And so this is a little bit of a blend. It's got Pinot Noir in there and it's got Pinot Meunier in there. So 70% Pinot Noir, 30% Pinot Meunier. It gives it some beautiful length, beautiful structure. The tasting notes on here are great. Once again, I go, people write their tasting notes. I don't need to write my own. But there's rose hip, there's soft, there's strawberry, it's bright, it's fresh. It's got this great length in the glass.
The length is fabulous. I mean, this just you could taste this, go and have a 3-course meal, come back and it's still there. It's fabulous.
Absolutely beautiful. It's an organic vineyard, and I think it's one of the biggest organic vineyards in all of the UK, isn't it?
I believe so. So Oxney, in terms of their plantings, is 14 hectares. I can't remember what that is in acres, but it's 14 hectares. They contribute just over 30. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Huxley Reba is actually really interesting. But Oxney are responsible for 20% of the UK's organically grown grapes. I mean, this place is vast,
Fantastic.
and what they're doing, organics is so important.
They also got the first 20-point score for an English wine ever, regardless of sparkling, still, whatever. First ever maximum 20-point score for their Chardonnay. But what we did learn when we were down there was, Mr. Taylor bought some and then he couldn't buy any more because there was none left after it got the 20-point score. But do you know who consumed a lot of it?
Go on.
The badgers.
Do badgers drink wine? No?
So, unfortunately, well, they didn't drink the wine, but unfortunately, fortunately for the badger, a little badger got in and ate 2 rows of the grapes.
I thought badgers ate mushrooms. No, they eat grapes now, badgers.
This is adventurous series.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem, isn't it? If wildlife in the vineyard in many ways is to be encouraged, but what you don't want is that wildlife consuming your grapes.
They've got badger-proof electric fences now.
Wow.
Who doesn't need a badger-proof electric fence?
I could do with it. I've not got a problem with badgers, but I'd just love to own one of those so I could say I owned it.
What, a badger or an electric fence?
Well, both, in fairness.
to keep the badger in?
Yeah, here's my pet badger. It's going to get out through the cat flap. I don't have a cat flap, but I'm imagining if I had a badger, I'd probably have a cat flap.
I'd probably get a badger flap.
A badger flap. Probably be
anyway,
bigger.
We are,
this rosé is fantastic.
We are completely off course here, and I'm sure we're in, and people are probably, they've drunk all their rosé, so we should probably move on to the next wine. Would you think? So what we're going to do is we're going to pop wines 2 and 3 in the glass together, and these are some wines that we think are, when we talk about English wine, I think Bacchus pops up a lot. I think Pinot Noir pops up a lot. I think Chardonnay pop up a lot. And I think these next 2 are wines that are a little bit, not different, because they might be grapes that you've heard of previously, but for England, a little bit
more unusual for English wine?
Unusual for England. So we've got one of them for wine number 2. So we've got the Oastbrook Pinot Gris. So if you ever want to go and hang out at a Hobbit house, this is the place to go. I need to drink my Oxney and not fall over.
Can badgers live in a Hobbit house? No, that's not relevant. Oastbrook, Pinot Gris. We think about English wine. I mean, the 3 most planted varieties: Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier. They're 78% of plantings between those 3, and obviously that's partly responsible for this boost in a huge amount of sparkling wine being produced. Then Bacchus, you're quite right, maybe a bit of Save-All, but yeah, Pinot Gris. You don't immediately think of Pinot Gris, do you?
You don't, and Pinot Gris, obviously the same grape as Pinot Grigio, and those could be 2 vastly different styles depending if you're drinking an Italian or an Alsatian. But I think once you go with this is its very own style as well. So,
and this is actually, I believe, an actual Alsatian Pinot Gris variety. So that's where that clone is from Alsace.
Absolutely. So, and then wine number 3 is going to be the Flint Vineyard. So we're running up to Norfolk, which is where me and Alex went to play a couple of weeks ago, and we had a chance to talk with Ben and Hannah up there, and he's absolutely fantastic, and we caught him on a busy day. We did part of the tasting, and we tasted the Bacchus last week, and we finished tasting the Bacchus, and his alarm went off. He had to run off and do some SO2 trials, and then came back to talk to us again. So it shows that being up at a winery, it's not all glamorous and just sitting around drinking wine every day. You've got to drink wine every day and then test the levels to make sure the wine's good, so you can drink
SO2 trials. I mean, that's really the reason I joined the industry, to be honest. It's
well,
never mind your time trials, SO2 trials. That's exactly what it's all about.
So once again, we're a little bit of a blend in here. We've got Pinot Gris, we've got Chardonnay, we've got Pinot Blanc, and a little bit of Pinot Noir in here.
That is quite a blend.
But once again, we're lucky because we got to get out into the vineyards and we got to talk to the people. So rather than listening to me and Lee blather on about this ride for hours, first we're going to go down to Sussex, and we're going to talk to America and Nick at Oastbrook, and then it will slide through up to Flint in Norfolk with Ben. So you've got the 2 wines here. The tasting notes will pop up, so get your ideas, your thoughts in there, and we'll come back and we'll discuss them a little bit in the studio momentarily. Enjoy.
Perfect.
I used to work in a bank for 14 years. Now I'm a farmer. Okay, let me have a look. We try to make something more high-end so people come here and actually feel as a destination. We also want to make a club, you know, when you go to California, to Sonoma, and you have a place to go and enjoy this high quality, and you can bring your family, your friends, your kids in the field. That's what we want to do. So on here we have 18,000 vines planted. Pinot Gris, we have Alsatian Pinot Gris. And then our wines, we all make 100% Pinot, so we don't mix it. On the back of that, we have some glamping. Again, we're gonna have tea area for the glamping as well, so you can sit, relax, play some guitar, and you're gonna have a fire pit in front. And also we plant the Grey Nichols willows to make the quicker bat. Next door neighbor is a kayak school. Because I decided to be a beekeeper, so what I'm doing here, every other row I planted red clover. Clover is very good to the soil. It's nitrogen fixation, so they take nitrogen from the atmosphere back to the soil. For the bee, we can save the bees, but the bee loves the clover and make amazing honey. So we want to make everything. Maybe in the future I want to make some skin products with grape seeds. So we use all the things on the side. And then as we want to have it as a destination, we build up the Hobbit house so you can come and stay. The door itself is 250 kilos. Everything is in oak. You have a bar, you sell catering. When you come in, you're going to have all the Lord of the Rings, all the Hobbit, everything there ready for you. This year we're going to have opera in the vineyard. We're going to have Brazilian tapas and then samba. We're going to have Midsummer Night's Dreams. When my husband said we're going to live in an old house, I said, this is not an old house, this is a castle, it's a Cinderella castle. So that's my Cinderella castle. So that's Nick.
I'm Nick, this is my better half American.
Nick also did plums.
She's the more beautiful one of the two.
That's not
She
true.
insists she's the better winemaker too. So I'm not sure about that.
I'm the only person who drives the tractor here. Yeah, single wheel. You can see here, that is the Chardonnay. It's going to the 4th year, so you can see that it's it's doing very well in the soil, so it's very established. And then this is the Chardonnay. What we're going to start to do at the moment in the field, we're going to do the bud wrapping. So we go back here, you can see how it started in fluorescent.
Yeah.
Like this time of the year, you go around one by one, and I have 18,000. And my bees, my bees are there.
So how are you avoiding all the sort of mildew and problems like that then? I mean, especially, you know.
Can you see there?
Uh-huh.
A lot of people, they bud rubbing, they leave the
leave
leaves.
it.
I take all out. Any cane that comes up here, I take out and I burn it. I do most of the job by hand, and then I'm in the field every day. I have a PA3 as well, qualification and spray. Here you can see the Pinot Blanc. The Pinot Blanc has not been affected by the frost. The reason that you have single gill is because I want to concentrate in just one area to avoid, problem. Every single vine I treat differently. When I prune, if I see that the vine is very vigorous, I leave more buds. If I see that is low in vigorosity, I leave less buds. So basically, in vineyard, in viticulture, less is more. If you prune wrongly, it will take 3 to 5 years to fix a mistake done. And then shall I have some wine now?
Yeah, that sounds an excellent plan.
This wine here it had a little bit of oxygen exposure right at the beginning, so it was basically pressed with the so it's a whole bunch press. We allowed a little bit of oxygen exposure to start with, but then from that point onwards, it was pretty reductive. And we were fermenting 16, 17 degrees, so really trying to get as much kind of thiol input as we possibly could. Was in tank for about 6 to 7 months, basically bottled, and then we released it. That was 2-3 months later, actually.
So are you tending to use selected yeast to really sort of develop those
styles? So it's basically, we use 71B on this one.
Okay.
And really we wanted to get those kind of stone fruits, which are very characteristic of this particular wine. And you want to get the stone fruits, and also you've got a little bit of honeysuckle there as well. So it's kind of very, very kind of rich on the nose, and very lovely kind of aroma, which I think, is the wonderful thing about Pinot Gris. It has great mouthfeel, it has nice finish, and it's also got this wonderful kind of almost fruity aroma. It's the viscosity, which, you know, again, some people describe as creaminess. And it does feel, you know, velvet.
Very velvet, just mouthfeel.
Yeah. But it is a lovely kind of wine, and it's great to have, you know, with, you know, it's great with kind of cheeses, great with, in fact, it's great with fish, but also really good with curry. And it's been a lot of fun.
Brilliant.
Oh no, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
We are here with Ben, who is the winemaker at Flint Vineyard, and we're going to have a taste of some of his delicious wine today. Let's talk about Flint Vineyard's Silex Blanc.
The reason we call it Silex is because it obviously means Flint in French. And this isn't a single variety, it's a blended. Essentially Pinot dominant grape varieties. So Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, Pinot Blanc. And then it's a moving target really, Silex. This 2019's got a little bit of Chardonnay in it. We do pick grapes from different vineyards. We use mostly our own grapes from our own estate, but we've got a relationship with Martin's Lane Vineyard down in Essex. Really fantastic vineyard site down there, and that's formed part of the Silex blend. So yeah.
Well, the first one I think that you tried that we sold in our shop was the one which had Solaris and you know, and it had batonnage on Solaris in oak barrels and things that nobody else does, and that was really cool. But this again, it's a really classy wine, isn't it?
It is. It's got nice richness there. There's texture to it, and you know,
there's a bit of oak in this one, isn't there? And
so there's 100% fermented and aged in oak. It's had about 9 months in oak, and malolactic fermentation. We do sequential mallow, and that all happens in oak. But we only do about 40% of the wine in malolactic fermentation because we're just trying to obviously not overpower it with all of those kind of buttery flavours that you get, and keep a bit of the fruit and the floral quality. So yeah, I mean that's the idea behind this. A bit more of a textured wine than the Bacca, something a bit softer.
And this blend changes every year depending what's available, what's right, what's not, and all that kind of stuff.
That's right. Whatever the fruit looks like, we will change it. The 2020 has actually got a little bit of Bacchus in it. And that's similar to the Solaris in the fact that, you know, sometimes one of those aromatic German varieties can just lift the whole the aroma profile of the wine. So yeah, it's kind of just changes every year.
Brilliant. I think blends are great, and sometimes, you know, people get into wine, go, blended wine, all that, you know, because the best wine has to be a single grape from a single place and a single, you know. But you know, blended wines give you these opportunities to do different flavours, different textures, different aromatics, that kind of stuff, and that's what makes these wines absolutely amazing and different to anything else.
Just we're here now on the border between Norfolk and Suffolk, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And you obviously had the chance post your time in France working. It was in Beaujolais, wasn't it? You had the chance to look around the country and go, where shall I base myself? And you picked here on the map.
I wanted to come to East Anglia. That was basically a rather large target to aim for, because I had studied at Plumpton like yourself. Did a lot of work on climate and managed to get hold of some information from the Met Office that was only available to students for free. So I had some free data, lots of it, and that was data going back to the 60s, you know, daily data for all of the different variables for the climate. I plotted that on a big map, and you can identify that actually East Anglia is a very, very warm, dry, sunny region. Even though we're a bit further north, we have very similar mean temperatures, and actually warmer and certainly drier than those down south and west. And I was looking for sort of lighter soils, sort of sandy, gravelly soils, and it just so happens that this is a real sort of area of gravel. We've got a gravel pit just over the road from the vineyard. So it was just a bit of luck really, a bit of fortune, and
a bit of south-facing slope as well.
Yeah, so. That's right. You don't get too many slopes in Norfolk, but we've got one, and yeah, it's good. Hopefully, it's a promising site.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much. Welcome back. I hope that gave you an insight as to a couple of very different places, a couple of very different winemakers, and two very different styles of wine. The Oastbrook, I think it's, you know, and looking at the taste, you know, there's a lot of peach, there's a lot of what else is in there? I need new glasses. There's pear, there's peach, fruit, mango,
grass, Gallia melon. That's a cool one, isn't it?
Gallia melon specifically, yes, I like that.
I think it's all down to the 71B, don't you?
Well, what else would it be? But what else would it be? To 71B or not to 71B? As I believe...
that is not the question.
It isn't the question, no.
So some great tasting notes in there. And what was interesting about going down here is we tasted the 18 and the 19 side by side. And the 2018, as we've got in here, it's got this nice richness there, this beautiful roundness to it. And I think, food-wise, this is great with a cheese board, like a creamy cheese or something that's got a little bit of saltiness
Something
to
salty
it.
to it, yeah.
Almost, it's got that richness. You can have a roast chicken dinner with this quite happily. The 19, on the other hand, a bit lighter, a bit fresher, a bit more of that kind of high-acid zip to it, which goes, two vastly, vastly different wines. Same grapes, same winemaking techniques. And we talked, very briefly to both America and Nick about this, and it's the line that, are you going after a house style? So if someone goes, I love Oastbrook, I'll get the wines of Oastbrook, do you want to try and be the same every year? Or do you want to do different and look at, because when you talk about the best wines in the world, people talk about vintage and go, I prefer the 17 to the 15. And do you remember that great English summer of 2018 when the Pinot Noir was amazing?
I do say that a lot about 2018. Do you remember that great vintage? And somebody turned the light on in like April, didn't they? And it stayed on. But I think the interesting thing there is
right in here.
Same wine, same winemaking techniques, etc. We're trying to work out in England, what do our vineyards do? What do specific sites give us that's different? Well, you can't view a vineyard through the prism of a single vintage because every vintage is connected. As we know, what happens in one vintage affects the next one. You almost need a 10-year snapshot of that vintage to realise what is the true personality. So it's like, if you meet me one day, I might be really happy and bubbly. I wouldn't, it would be an act, but I might be really happy and bubbly one day. You could meet me the next day, I'd be really grumpy because I'm having a bad day. You need to build up a picture of me over more time than you would be prepared to spend with me, admittedly. But you need to do that to build up that picture.
Like that, do my eyes in though.
Yeah. I mean, it's just my shirt collection is just the slow descent into madness of a prematurely middle-aged man. But
I think this is why Alex isn't over here tonight. I think he feels a little bit.
Yeah, don't imagine that Alex and I haven't had a row. That's not why he's not hit, because it's him and Jamie and I'm the interloper. He's just decided he doesn't want to sit next to me, like my old friend at school. But I carried that with me for a long time. But anyway,
get the third microphone to work.
That idea of really exploring different vintage and vintage variation in English wine, I think, is a real key part of what English wine can and indeed should be.
As I said, the weather here, when have we ever had 2 good summers in a row? Ever. In anybody's lifetime. If someone can remember 2 or 3 good summers in a row, please put it in the chat. But that shows that the wines are going to be different every year. If it's a wet, you're going to, pick earlier. If it's dry all the way through, you can get more richness in that.
Yeah.
And as much as that can be an absolute nightmare for winemakers, because you go, it's... he told me it's going to be sunny all week over there, but he was actually looking at the weather forecast for Havana rather than the UK.
Famed for their Pinot Noir in many ways, exactly. Havana.
But I think we should celebrate that, and we
Agreed.
should go, okay, this vintage was and it's, sometimes you get what people call a bad vintage. But what I find is, if you go to the great places in the world, even in a bad vintage, the best wineries and the best winemakers still make a great wine.
The best grape growers and the best winemakers, they work together. And if you're a really good grape grower, you know that Mother Nature doesn't give you the same thing every day and every year. As a great grape grower, what you are trained to do is respond to what nature gives you. So if you know what you're doing and have the experience, you go, it's particularly wet this year, that means I need to do X, Y, and Z to the fruit. It's really sunny, I do the opposite. Same with the winemakers. So yeah, I think sort of saying a vintage is good or bad, I think is a little bit reductionist. I think it's a bit more complex than that, as you've just
absolutely
stated.
Is. And I think for a general overview, if you're just going to pick a wine off the shelf with no other advice, that vintage can help a little bit. It can give you a little bit of a direction. Yes. But what I'd say is find a winemaker that you love, find a winery that you love, find an independent wine shop that you know and you trust. Not that I know and trust. Maybe I know, but trust. It's a whole different thing. But get in and talk to people about what you like, what you enjoy. And, doing tastings like this, as I've always said, it's not about telling you what the best wine is and what you should always drink. But what we hopefully can do is give a little bit of insight and direct you to getting to your next great glass.
Guys, you should look at the tasting notes for wine 3.
Look at this. Smooth.
This is cool.
Smooth almonds, butter, citrus, oak, dill,
Marshmallow. Dried apricots.
Marshmallow, look at that. Toasty.
Oh, you've got the smart people who've been here before that realise that if you put a space, it puts it up as different tasting notes, putting things together.
Thinking.
Well done, everybody.
Sophisticated. No, you're supposed to be reviewing the wines, not the presenters here. Gooseberry. Again, you're supposed to be talking about the wine, not the presenters. Now what I have to do is I have to find a topper for that joke and use a third tasting note, but I've already ruined the joke by explaining that.
Sharpness.
Somebody's written shirts. Well, is that a suggestion you'd prefer we did it without shirts? Because nobody needs to see that. Some really, and quite a range of tasting notes there.
Yeah, we're not past the watershed yet, are we?
Are we not? Oh, does it matter on the internet? Oh, okay, never mind. Certainly not. My family in Argentina are watching this. They can't understand it anyway. They don't speak English. But such a range of tasting notes there. Not all in what kind of one place, which with certain varieties in certain climates you kind of go, they'll all sit like they're all.
But isn't that interesting?
Fruit
because we've got 4 different grapes in there that bring out 4 different things, and therefore you've got lots of different things that you pick
It's
up on.
almost like the wine is an orchestra, with each grape being a different instrument coming together to a harmonious. This is where I need Alex Taylor's help because he knows about music. I don't know about music, I just pretend to. But it's like everything brings something different to the blend. And so what you're saying, talking about these things being unusual or unique for English wine, because we always think of sparkling and Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and maybe Bacchus. You know, where else in the world would you find a blend like this? Whilst they can do that in other places in the New World, I'm not saying it's only here, there's very few places you'd find a blend like this that is done this well and is this interesting.
No, this for me is one of the best and most interesting English wines I think I've ever tasted. You know, I'd nearly said the most unique, but you can't be the most unique because that doesn't make sense. But you know what I mean? It stands there by itself, doing its own thing, and it's really cool, really interesting. Sometimes you can have a bottle of wine and you go, that's interesting. And that's code for, that's different.
It's not
but this is absolutely delicious. It's really cool. And what's great about this CLX blend is each year it's slightly different. They did a vintage that they did Solaris in it. They did a vintage, and all different bits and pieces in there. So it will change year to year, and whatever Ben can get out of the vineyard and what he thinks is great and what they blend. And they've got a wine club. It's called the Ven Club, isn't it?
The Ven Club, yes.
After their label. So they make certain things that you can only be if you're a member, and they send cool blends and cool stuff. And I think, did they have a competition this year that someone from the Ven Club could design the label for the new wine? So they're really in for looking after their members and who they are. Just. It was really exciting for me and Alex because it's the first time since lockdown we actually got out and got to go and see people since like our pre-show. But just really nice, really welcoming, and smart wines. And you can be the nicest person in the world, and you can have a celebrity endorsing your rosé from the south of France or whatever you're doing these days. But unless what's in the bottle is good, does it really matter, all the bells and whistles? And this is just damn good, it's interesting, and it's quintessentially what Ben wants it to be.
Do you know,
that's cool.
It's always come down to that for me. All that stuff aside, it's what's in the bottle and it's what the liquid does. To be honest, I think the other interesting thing about this, so it's East Anglia, it's Norfolk. So 10 years ago, English wine, okay. Wine in Norfolk? What?
I should talk to my wife. She went to UEA. Maybe did she drink any wine? No, I don't know. Probably not at this quality.
Not at this. I mean, maybe $2 chuck or whatever our equivalent is. But
must be 50p.
50p chuck. That's a terrible marketing piece. I mean, who came up with that and launched it? It's dreadful. They should have just put Kylie Minogue behind it. But that's what we in the trade refer to as a callback. You'll have missed that primarily because it wasn't really that funny. But this, Norfolk, East Anglia. So East Anglia currently accounts only for 10% of total English plantings. There's 108 vineyards in East Anglia. If you sort of look at the amount of vines being planted, so in 2019, over 3 million vines were planted in the UK. If you look at where the new plantings are going,
the only way is
up. That's a reference, isn't it, to something that I look like the kind of person who would understand that reference. But if you look at where new vines are going, absolutely not. We're losing viewers by the minute. 38% of new plantings are going into Wales. Second on that, 33% of new plantings are going into East Anglia. So it's the driest and sunniest part of the UK. All the rain falls in Wales or in Birmingham. The Birmingham people love the rain, apparently. because it all falls there. So Norfolk gets away, East Anglia gets away with being pretty dry, pretty sunny. What a place.
Which was an amazing stat that I didn't realise, because you hear about, there's people, Camel Valley down, down, and wineries down Devon, Cornwall way, and you would think that would be the warmest, sunniest place to go and go make some wine. But East Anglia, because it's the other side of the country, so the rainfall coming in from the Atlantic is finished.
Like the old, the rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain, which to do an Alan Partridge is not correct. It's actually broken up by the Cantabrian mountains. It doesn't fall on the plain at all. So we need to launch a campaign to get that corrected. No, the rain comes in if you've got westerlies, falls in Wales, Birmingham, doesn't make it over to East Anglia.
If he was over here, how many times would he have said rain shadow by now?
Well, I was trying to get that in, but then I realised that would be an ecumenical matter. But
it absolutely would be.
Wouldn't it just? But I think these two wines are incredibly interesting, and each in their own way, and so diverse as well. Just in two wines, you've got great diversity in what England can produce.
No, I think so, and they're great tasting, and you just see how the two wines are so different. It's not about personal favourites. Mm-hmm. It's like saying who's your favourite child, and it's not neither of them. But I like both these wines. So yeah,
there's some great tasting notes. We got beeswax,
dill,
peach on the aftertaste, grass,
pepper. I like that. I got a real pepperiness there. White pepper.
Yeah, it's got this almost savoury thing, almost and without wanting to put the wine somewhere else, like you get in a Grüner Veltliner, that kind of Austrian kind of thing.
Exactly what sort of popped into my head there. But there's some texture to it as well.
There must be some American oak I'm guessing as well in there. He loves to. This is all oak.
All oak.
Yeah, 100% oak fermented.
Wow. So. That's really well handled as well.
It's well balanced, because sometimes oak just blows your head off.
Yeah, the oak is in check.
Anyway, there are some great tasting notes in there, but with so many tasting notes, I'm guessing people are doing lots of typing and not lots of drinking because we've stopped them drinking all their wine. So we should probably...
Not on.
What we're going to do next is, we don't normally do it like this, but we're going to do a white and a red together. So we're going to do the Roman Road Chardonnay, and we're going to do the Suitcase Pinot Noir from Simpsons. But before we get them in your glass, before we do either of those, we will do the wine news. Wine news. So, Mr. Taylor put the wine news together, and then I had to get him to prep me on who these architects and things are, because I know nothing about houses.
Well, I mean, what wine and architecture, it naturally fits together, doesn't it? I mean, usually people into wine are into architecture. Are they? No, that would be right, Mr. Taylor. That's designers.
Your microphone's not working for a reason. Back over there.
Indeed.
Back in your box.
Indeed.
So there's you can put the picture up if you want.
That would help.
Put the picture up, because that would be really pretty in that chair. See, that's much better than an empty chair. So this is a new winery being built in Kent by Norman Foster. So for those who know Norman Foster, architects.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't know Norman Foster really would be the question, but certainly the UK's most famous architect. I'm led to believe, in case that isn't correct, that's what I've been told by somebody, but possibly in the world. And
he didn't build my house.
No, he didn't build mine. Mine was built quite some time ago. What was he doing? What has he been doing?
Lazy.
Probably working on this. But if you think about wine and architecture, okay, whilst in England we don't think about that. When you go on holiday and you're in California or Argentina, Australia, you go and visit some really quite dramatic wineries that clearly there's been a lot of thought about what should this look like, how can we integrate it with the environment, how can we make it green. And I believe that's
Napa, how can I make myself stand out and not see any environment at all? It's like, boom! Here is the Parthenon of wine. You must come here and spend £500 on a tasting.
How can I make my winery look like it should be featured as a James Bond villain's lair?
Exactly. How can I achieve a £500 price point for my wine because of the house I put it in?
Well, I think that the designers just imagined that having a footprint was a good thing, and therefore they wanted that footprint to be as big as possible. Anyway,
you've got to have someone to sell you
on the shot here. Is this the shot that's got the body of water in it? So from the design that's been put forward, you've got this wonderful curved winery that kind of fits into the environment around it, and then this great body of water here. Now, what's really interesting about this design, which you can't necessarily tell from the image, is that in the event of some kind of global catastrophe, the owner of this winery, who's not officially been announced, but in the event of a global catastrophe, he can press a button and that body of water shifts back and out comes Thunderbird 3. I mean, that's what English wine needs, in my opinion.
Its own Tracy Island.
Its own Tracy Island, which you eventually,
as long as you've got 3 egg cartons and some sticky back plastic,
well, exactly.
You can do your own.
Eventually, he could merchandise that and capitalise on it. and
we
like
are
George
we are-
Lucas and toys.
We are going very, very off piste here. So the next thing we're going to talk about, the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is the climate, because England and climate, if we didn't talk about the weather, we'd have nothing to talk about, would we? Or so they say.
Queuing. We'd talk about queuing, or the post office, but the weather primarily.
Online Wine Tasting Club, we do not talk about the post office.
No. No.
But what you'll see is we have been getting warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer, because back in the day it was too cold to grow anything here. Didn't have enough degree days, didn't have enough sunshine, didn't get this. And as you can see from this graph, we are getting a little bit warmer, a little bit more sunshiny, which therefore allowing us to grow more grapes in more parts of the world. And parts of the world, parts of England.
Can I just interrupt, because
Alex,
I've got a note here. We have our Pinot Gris, and we were going to talk about sparklings made from Pinot Gris as well.
Yes, we were.
We're going back. So,
because there's a really good producer of sparkling Pinot Gris.
It is,
and I always, if you follow me on social media, but if you do that, sort your life out, what you're doing on social media anyway, let alone following me.
If you don't, he's Wineman147. So
yeah, you don't want to follow that.
He sings a song.
Utter nonsense. But I talk about this producer a lot on social media, so I kind of feel like it's me going, oh, I want to talk about them again, but I know that Alex and Jamie, you know them, Fox and Fox in Mayfield in Sussex, who are just awesome across the board.
It is.
Make some great sparkling Pinot Gris.
I just want to chuck out, and I'm sure in the chat there's going to be hundreds of people in the go, but what about this winery? What about this winery? What about this winery? There are so many phenomenal wineries out there. Get out, get drinking, get tasting them. Unfortunately, we can only put 6 in a box right now. But yeah, and we can't do sparkling. But yeah, Fox and Fox. Yet. Talk to the tech guy. But I think what I like about Fox and Fox, so many of the English sparklings are going after this classic champagne style with Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. And just to have something that's 100% Pinot Gris is just, it's fun. It's sometimes you get these sparkling wine, they're a little bit heavier, a little bit that yeasty, that kind of toastiness, and the Gris is just so bright and fresh and delicious.
There's so much vibrance and bounce to it, and
bright fruit. Yeah. It's really kind of cool to try something a little bit different. Sometimes, and I'm probably going to get like banned from the wine world here. A lot of English sparklings, they're very similar, and it's about which one you like the most or where you've been and stuff like that.
I would argue the same for a lot of champagne, so I don't necessarily disagree with you.
I would, especially the champagnes that have the names.
Yes.
A lot of them are very similar, but this gives a real point of difference. Yeah. But anyway, we don't have that in the glass, so we don't want to get very excited about it. But hey, if you want to get some, give us a shout. We'll send you some. Happy days.
Definitely.
So we're talking a bit about climate, and where English wine has got is it's got a little bit warmer. And 10 years ago, the temperature in Chablis, which is the north of Burgundy, is the same temperature that it is in the UK now. So we're becoming a little bit more Burgundian in style, for once of a horrible, horrible phrase and trying to plug something somewhere else. And Burgundy's getting a little bit warmer, and they're trying to have to do some different bits and pieces. But before we qualify and go into the wines, I'm going to tell a little bit of story, because if I don't talk about Australia, it's not tasting, is it? And if I don't mention I went to Australia, it's not tasting.
Have you been to Australia, Jim?
I did go. But I was at this Chardonnay producer in Margaret River, and we were tasting their wine. It was the first time I'd had like a proper Australian Chardonnay rather than here's
Jacob's Ditch.
Here's a lump of oak that we dropped some grapes on. I sat there tasting it, and it's got this beautiful richness of it that reminds you of Napa Valley, but it's got this elegance that reminds you of Burgundy. And the winemaker at the time was like, it's great to be compared to these great places in the world, but in 25 years time, what I want people to do is I want to pick up this glass of wine and go, that's a Margaret River Chardonnay. And I think right now, sometimes in England, we try and compete, and we want to try and go, oh, this is where the best known Pinot Noir or Chardonnay is in the world, so we want to make a Napa Valley style, or we want to make a Burgundian style and things like that. And that's all well and good, because that's where the benchmarks are. But what I want people to have going down the line, fingers crossed, is we'll be able to pick this wine up and go, yeah, that's an English Chardonnay, if not a Chardonnay from Norfolk, or a Chardonnay from Kent or Sussex or something like that. So right now we're in the point that it's great and it's good to be compared to the best place in the world, But at some point, we've got to
We've got to step out of that. I'm going to double
stand
down.
alone.
I'm going to double down on your anecdote, because I agree. And we hear it a lot with sparkling wine, don't we? Go, oh, English sparkling wine, it's like champagne. Let's stop doing that. Let's stop making that association. I understand from a consumer point of view, it's sometimes easy to go, you've heard of champagne. Okay, that does this thing. Here's English wine. It's like that. But the anecdote I'll use is I was playing an open mic night once many years ago, and this was a venue that I'd not played at before, which was why they let me get up to play. And I did a cover of a Jimi Hendrix song, and it was one of those nights I actually looked like I could play the guitar. But I finished playing, and I came off the stage, and somebody sort of caught me, and he said, "Oh, that was really good." And he thought, "Oh, thank you very much." But then he said to me,
So I just want to interrupt. If anyone was trying to look at the bottles on the table, Alex has stolen them. So
he's just got a funnel in his mouth right now, and he's pouring them in. But this guy's
that's why he's so quiet.
yeah, this guy said to me, "You didn't sound, you weren't much like Jimi Hendrix." And first of all, I thought, well, I'm not Jimi Hendrix. But then this thought went through my head. I don't want to be the next Jimi Hendrix for a whole variety of reasons. Firstly, I don't know what I'm doing.
And you don't have the love for Matthias Rosé.
No, I don't. I certainly don't. Jimmy and me have had some very stern words about that. But I thought what I'd rather be known as not the next Jimi Hendrix, but the first Lee Isaacs. And it's
the only.
And the only. And the world certainly doesn't need any more of whatever this is supposed to be. And yes, before anybody emails in, I do comb my hair with a spoon. So
you've given away the question.
Oh no, is that going to be I can use other implements. I don't use a fork because that's too similar to a comb.
Disney,
so I'm not using
Disney
a fork.
Will be suing you.
Yeah, well, they probably will, won't they? But I think it's better to be known as the first of something, or to be known for doing that thing, rather than to constantly be compared to something else. So again, you've said it more articulately and intelligently than I have, and I've just doubled down on it and brought it down to my level. But well, it is, isn't it? But constantly, oh, Burgundy does this. Yes, Burgundy does that, but we're not Burgundy, and that's fine. But it doesn't mean that we can't do Chardonnay and Pinot Noir just as well, just in a different way. Yeah, they grow it, we grow it, and we do it really well.
Absolutely.
These two
there are those similarities that some of the clones of the grapes we use are the same. Well,
I'm going to talk about clones.
People will tell you that it's the same piece of soil, comes down from Kent under the channel, comes up in Chablis. The French will tell you it's the piece from Chablis, comes down under the soil and up into Kent. But I know which way I think it goes. But that's each to their
all
own.
Geology goes from west to east, that's a fact.
Really?
It's a fact. Yeah, I've got a diploma.
You learn it
not in
first.
Geology, but
you heard it here first from the one and only the Isaacs.
I bought it on the internet. But anyway, yeah.
So what do we got? So we're doing.
Rose won an award last year, didn't it?
He's getting involved again.
I know. Look at this. I can't swap places with him because I don't actually know what it is he's doing. Which sounded a bit more backhanded than intended.
He's drinking.
Oh right, I can do that. I can do that.
So right around Simpsons. So we're Simpsons down in Kent. They're on the Roman road, kind of between Canterbury and Dover, as you get down to that part of the world. And they started their winemaking down in the south of France.
Yes, of course.
They were making some nice little bits down in Languedoc, and they've still got the winery down there, and then decided they wanted to come back and do something in England. So they found this site in Kent.
Which I think they planted 2014, if I remember correctly. Was that when they planted this, the sort of Roman road, I think was planted 2014.
The early 10, 12, 14, something like that.
Yeah, 12 or 14. Which, what vintage, if you planted in 2012, which I know going back to Oxney, their first plantings of 2012. I don't know if anybody remembers 2012 as a vintage. 2018, really bright and sunny and warm. 2012 was very much the opposite of that. Just rain. It didn't not rain.
A bit like yesterday.
A bit like yesterday, but all year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was all it did.
A year of yesterdays.
Yeah, there's a song title in that somewhere. I must go. I've had an idea.
No songs today.
But the Roman road. So yeah, the Romans kind of traversed this road in like AD 43 when they invaded.
That's why it's called the road.
Yeah. Not Roman because you're Roman around.
Oh, like goats do Rome.
Goats do. That was genius.
They do. Don't
Fairview goats do Rome. And as I think Alex alluded to in the opening VT, it was the Romans that brought grapes here. Did they do anything else for us, Alex? Have you had time to research that? I don't know if they did.
It turns out they didn't.
Rubbish.
All they did was roads and grapes.
Roads and grapes, which, well done.
Fair, that's all we really need.
We didn't need anything else from them. I mean, they could have brought pasta to us. We had to wait another 2,000 years before we really discovered pasta. But
anyway,
there was architecture as well.
All right, you're not.
You and your architecture
doesn't work.
Look at this. What are these tasting notes here
So,
for wine for?
Simpsons, this is their Roman Road. So they've got two big vineyard sites. They've got their Railway Hill site and they've got their Roman Road site, which is basically on the Roman Road.
Yeah.
And so they make some great sparklings. They make a phenomenal Pinot Meunier called Derringston. And then the two Chardonnays that they do, they've got their Gravel Castle, which is a little bit of a softer, more kind of like round, fruity style, which is absolutely delicious and just good drinking. And then they've got this Roman Road, which we've got in the glass, which is bright, linear, great acid, and it. Was it last year or the year before? I don't know what last year was. It doesn't count, does it? But they won a Decanter Best in Show award, which basically means top 50 wines in the world. So that's not a bad drop of juice, especially when we talk about Chardonnay and the great places in the world that make Chardonnay. Space dust.
I noticed that space dust and space
dust.
Space dust.
That's a theme for your next shirt.
Oh yes, done. So what I'm going to do actually is, as these word clouds appear, I'm just going to get images of them and have them put on a shirt. That's what I'm going. And then if I'm struggling for a tasting note, I'll just go space dust.
I like that. That'll be our end of year competition. We're going to put one of these up and go, which wine was this?
Yeah.
But great things again, you've got apple in there, you've got green gage, you've got this butter because you've got that little bit of richness to it.
Yeah, hazelnut. I like that because this. No, I'm not going to do that. I was going to suddenly compare it to wines from elsewhere in the world, but I just went on that diatribe about how we shouldn't. But yeah, someone said I think something like almond or something like that, and hazelnut, and I get that element to it as well, nectarine. So there's some great notes. That's just got layers. That's like an onion, isn't it?
Parfait.
Everyone loves it. You ever meet anyone say I don't like parfait? I never met anyone that said that.
I think that's every bit as good as their prize-winning one. That is even better, in my opinion.
That's wonderful, I think.
That's beautiful.
I've got very strong feelings about Chardonnay. Because Chardonnay has this cult status, right? And it's kind of the thing, everybody goes, Chardonnay. I think, and don't pick me up on numbers here, because I don't do numbers as we've established.
7, 8, 11.
I think 95%. That's this number van, yeah. I think I can do jokes in other languages as well. Anyway, not that I understand what I'm saying. I think 95% of Chardonnay made is average. Now, if you understand maths, that's not actually possible, but you know what I'm trying to say. I think 5% of Chardonnay made globally is amazing and really shows what the variety can do. And I think this is sitting up there. I mean, that's fantastic.
I think there's certain grapes that shouldn't have the cheapest chips alternative, and I think both these two grapes that we have here don't do themselves justice in a really cheap style. There's lots of grapes out there that do a beautiful quaffable. You take things like Shiraz, you take things like Malbec. Yes, there's some absolutely world-class wines out there, but there's also, if you just want that cheap quaffable, it's £5, I don't care, I just want to have a drink, and it's absolutely delicious, does what it needs to do.
Yeah.
Chardonnay and Pinot Noir do not fit into those categories. If you want to drink a bottle of wine at that price point, pick something different. Otherwise, you're not getting to the heart of what this great grape can really be.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we must all start drinking Clos Vougeot every day like Mr. Taylor likes to enjoy.
Yeah.
But let's have a look. And these grapes, because there was in the early mid-90s, there was the ABC Brigade, wasn't there?
Oh, indeed.
But Chardonnay, because of this massive over oak style. And if I had a quid for every time I've had someone through my career in restaurants go, oh, I don't like Chardonnay, but I love a good Chablis.
Yep.
I'd have a couple of quid.
Yep.
I really would. But that comes down to a little bit of education, a little bit of taste, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's big communication element.
I think for people who go, I don't like Chardonnay, it's not you don't like Chardonnay, you don't like what some people have done to Chardonnay.
Because it's that versatility of Chardonnay that's almost been its downfall, because it's so versatile, and that's why winemakers love it, because it really communicates sight, but then it really communicates winemaking techniques, but also you can go, I can make this fairly cheaply, high yield, and it will still give me a serviceable wine. It's that versatility that almost has made it do too much. But
it's because it does well. You can have it stainless steel, you can have a little bit of old oak, you can have lots of brand new oak. It's got enough punch to stand up to that kind of stuff. Balfour Heath, who we're going on to next, actually did a botrytis dessert wine.
Yeah, their late harvest Chardonnay.
And we'll talk a little bit more about dessert wines as we go forward. But we've got a bit Chardonnay heavy, and now we're going on to Pinot Noir, because I'm guessing cherry raspberry and vanilla and berry bombastic.
Berry bombastic. Cocoa nibs.
We're probably not on Chardonnay anymore.
No, probably tonka bean. Is that like a tonka toy?
So
don't have them now. Bakewell tart.
So we're going down to Balfour Heath. So we're in Kent again, and probably the one winemaker who can stand up to Lee when it comes to shirt selection. I remember. So the Ferg, who's the winemaker down at Hush Heath, he and Lee did an Instagram live, and it popped up that this is going live. So I clicked watch. I started watching, and I stopped watching so I could text Alex and go, get on Instagram, you've got to see these shirts.
If you think my shirts are bad, which, bad is an utterly subjective term, and I don't want to get into a metaphysical debate about the nature of art, although we might do that in a minute. My shirts are, they are what they are. Fergus's shirt on this particular live that Jamie's just referenced actually came with a 10-mile exclusion zone. It really was extreme. But he's, Ferg's a great guy. He's very down to earth. He's also he's a reasonably good chess player. Is he watching this? Do we know?
We'll soon find out. If he's in the chat, give us a wave.
Ferg, if you're watching, you're a reasonable chess player. If he's not watching, he's really good, because Ferg and I are so cool. We play chess together. That's what I do in my spare time. Game of chess. But anyway, I think Ferg's a great winemaker, and he's part of an English wine. We don't have many winemaking dynasties here in the UK, do we? We don't have many. We've got Owen and Fergus Elias, father and son. I think that's pretty much the only dynasty, isn't it, so far?
There's Alex and Annabelle Taylor. She made some wine with you.
She has custom
that qualifies as a dynasty.
So you're the
sure.
Second then.
Yeah,
done.
But for this, and we will talk about clones here, because I think our producer here will enjoy this. But in 2014, Owen Elias planted Pinot Noir at the Fox Ridge Vineyard, which is the highest elevation down at Hush Heath, and he planted clones, and everybody's going to love this, clones 828 and 777. 777, am I right? No, just me. 777. No, this is awkward now. You need to. Anyway, in 2014, he planted. He planted clones 828 and 777. So these. Pinot Noir has about 50 different clones, which means that they're ever so slightly different to everything else. And, one will ripen slightly earlier, one a bit later, one will give you a bit more cherry fruit, one will have a bit more tannin, all sorts of stuff. And
what's your favourite clone?
777. I'm a 777. I'm a classic 777 devotee. You cut me open in the middle, says 777.
Right, when I'm flying 747.
Does that taste of aubergine?
Oh, look, it's really weird.
Look at that.
When we get to wine 5 or 6, someone's always tasting aubergine, and I don't know if that's because it's in the wine or you're tasting it at home
is this still
or whatever it is.
Yeah, I can't say anything there. My dear, ecumenical. I wholeheartedly agree.
I love the fact there's a red wine glass emoji in there. This tastes like red wine.
Black Forest Gatto, apple skin. Right, somebody's written apple skin. I'm going to come back to you. Is that a green or a red apple skin? Because I like it. I like apple skin, but I think we need to explore that a little bit further. Let's explore how far taste
You're going to come back with what is Mr. Chips doing. It's like, it's good, but it's not the one.
Look, it's a good guess, but it's not right. Then it's not a good guess, is it? Because it would be a good guess if it was right.
So, some good comments on the dynasties.
Yes.
The Lindos.
Bob and Sam.
Bob and Sam, and the rest of the family.
And
well.
Indeed.
Exactly. So Camel Valley.
Yeah. I hope I didn't give anyone the hump because I didn't mention the Lindos.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I'll just go now.
Yeah, just.
No, but that's good. Any other comments on Dynasty? But that is quite correct. Yes.
Langham.
Oh yeah, Langham's.
Langham. Yeah. Obviously you've got Tommy there. Tommy G.
Yeah.
Making stuff now.
So we also have a comment from John Mobbs.
Who?
It was,
John Mobbs. Who's that?
No idea. I'm joking. I've explained in the chat.
Hello, John.
So he walked around Balfour with Fergus and Owen, and he's now got even more respect for what they're doing, which is pretty cool.
Now, when we went down there, and this is when this whole thing was a little, we could do a little wine show thing and talk to people about it. we gave Balfour Hush Heath a call and said, could we pop down and have a look round and maybe get a quick chat with Ferg if he was around. For us being a nothing in the world of wine, he was the most gracious.
Maybe.
No, it's not changed much, has it? You know, you look at the quality of co-host.
Yeah, you've got a point there. Am I here as a government scheme? Is my parole officer behind all this? So anyway,
internship.
Internship.
But anyway, back to where I was at. They could have not been more gracious, more accommodating, and we thought we'd kind of like pop in and like grab him for like 15 minutes and go home. 3.5 hours later, we're still chatting. It's like, what do you want to taste? We'll open that. Walk around the winery. We do that, and it was fantastic. And then, you know, obviously, Mr. Geeky winemaker there starts talking about winemaking. I'm like, I'm just going to sit here quietly for a minute. You know, I'll give you my tasting notes and tell you what I think of it. But your 97 different batches of Bacchus fermented separately with different yeast strains.
Any B72 action there, Mr. Taylor? Yeah. Didn't they have a hit with? Was it Rock Lobster with Rock Lobster? Love Shack.
The Love Shack.
Love Shack. Yeah, B72s. No, B52s. Like the bomber. All right.
But anyway, that's.
Yeah.
We should probably. Should we have some dessert wine?
Are we at that point?
Are we really there?
Are people?
What are we heading to? Like Atacama or?
Magda has said. Great claim, but you forgot to mention anything about 2018. Was it any good? Was it like warm or something?
Oh, leading question in the chat. Leading question. So, does England generally make good red wine?
Or
your blanket statement?
My blanket statement is I am a panel chair at the Independent English Wine Awards, and the very first year I did this, I was on the red flight, and did the sparkling flight, really good. White flight, really good. The red flight we didn't really inspire us, it's fair to say. I think as a whole, when you think English wine, you think sparkling. I think still white. I think that blanket statement, do we make good red wine? No. Unless we get the right weather. Like, what was 2018 like?
2018 was hot. So 2018 was probably the warmest year, and it was a long hot, which was nice.
It was.
Because if you get 3 hot days in July, that does not do anything for grapes. You've got to have long and hot. You've got to have a long time for doing that. So you get that length of ripeness. You get both the fruit ripeness and the phenolic ripeness. It's just fruit ripeness by itself. You get this grippy tannin. It will be green. It will not be good.
You need flavour.
You need flavour. You need all those kind of things because all your flavour and all your colour come from the skins. And if that's not ripe and that's not balanced, you're going to get stalky greenness and it's just going to be a bit meh.
Yeah.
So this is why we do really good rosé, because we don't need lots of ripeness in the skin. We just need a little bit to give a little bit of colour. But when we do it pretty well. And the Pinot Noir that we're drinking right now, I think is absolutely delicious. You know, one of the best Pinots I think I've had from the UK. They also make a Pinot Meunier red, the Red Miller, which I think is maybe the best English red I've had.
Yeah.
I've not had all the English reds, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody in there going, there's this English red that you need to try, and if there is, send me a bottle, I will drink it, I'll give you my notes. But yeah, 2018 was a great year, and this is why we're able to do fantastic Pinot Noir from that year.
And the interesting thing about this, so it's hand-picked, it's 60-40%, so it's 60% 8 to 8 and 40% 777
only 40%?
Really,
you enjoy it only 40%?
Only 40%, and I still go for it. But it had a short period of just a bit of skin contact before fermentation, which was spontaneous, and then it was just gently pressed, but this is pretty much all free-run juice. And that went into a combo, because we like combos, of American, French, and stainless steel. And I just think it's so delicately handled. So I first tasted this just after Christmas. Ferg kindly sent me a bottle, and I think I probably spent 20 minutes writing the tasting note for the nose.
Phenomenal.
Because I don't have a life.
No, but you know, the thing is, all these vineyards we're tasting tonight before we go on to the last one, get down and see them. You can go and see them. They've all got tasting rooms. You can all go and visit, go and try the things.
Yeah.
I stopped into Hush Heath on my way down to Hastings a couple of weeks ago, sat on the they've got this
Lovely
beautiful
veranda, haven't they?
beautiful veranda that overlooks the Nanette's vineyard that they make their rosé out of. They've got a great little tasting board, some cheese, some grilled little baby gem lettuce with goat's cheese, and really, really good. Great service. They look after you. You can just have a glass of wine or a bottle, or they do little tasting flights with notes. It's a really cool place to go. Oastbrook, you would have seen in the video, you can go stay in a hobbit house. They've got a swimming pool, a beach bar, a tennis court. Really cool. You know, Flint's lovely up in Norfolk. Nice walk. You know, get up into the that part of the world. You're on the beach, coastal. Lovely.
The thing, we're so used.
If you're stuck with a staycation because we can't go anywhere this year, there's some great places.
There's so many places to stay, and a lot of these vineyards now have accommodation. And this is the thing that I'm very passionate about English wine. I want to see other people seeing that and get out there and see them. And as you said, probably not really going abroad this year. You can go and see these vineyards. You can go and stay. You can go and eat, and you will have a fantastic time. There's 165 wineries in this country. There are 700 vineyards in this country.
900
There's
now?
900
Latest.
now. 900 latest.
900, yeah.
Go and see
200
them.
new ones today.
Yeah, just in the last 20 minutes.
In the last 20 minutes, when you got your notes.
Well, if people watching this going, God damn, I'm going to go and plant a vineyard, and they've done it like that.
Look how we've inspired people
Look
since
at
8
that.
o'clock
Well,
this evening.
if there's one thing I do to people, it's not inspire them. It inspire them to leave.
So before we go on to dessert wine, Alex, are any questions in the chat that need answering, or are you rolling through it?
We've answered most of them in the chat, but there's a very, very specific question about is a sommelier in a restaurant responsible for the accuracy of the wine menu? And should the head sommelier be responsible for that? Or can it, because there's somebody who's had a bit of a bad experience with some menu errors, and the sommeliers were saying, not our problem.
So if you're the head sommelier and you write the wine list, I truly, before I joined this, I was a sommelier in Washington DC, in London, so I was always on that side of the thing. Errors happen on wine lists. A lot of it is in a foreign language, vintages change, sometimes winemakers don't quite, you get the exact percentages.
There's not always the dissemination of information.
The line is, if the wine list is wrong, it is the sommelier's job to fix it. Depending what it is, if it's a vintage variation, if it's if you're drinking by the glass and it says 2019 and it suddenly turns to 2020, 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be a problem to what you're drinking and what you enjoy. Yeah. But the point is, the sommelier needs to take responsibility for the guest experience. So if a vintage is wrong, or a grape is wrong, or the wine is wrong, it's their job to fix it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they need to go, if there's a price problem, for example, and you know what the wine's meant to be. If you see a bottle of Screaming Eagle and it says $25,
buy all of it.
That's not the price, and you need to look at that, and you've got to be smart about that.
What's
the reason?
The errors were listing Bordeaux producers as first growth when they weren't.
Oh, you can.
That's pretty unforgivable.
Okay, because there's only 5, and if you're a head sommelier, you kind of should know that. And I'm not saying anyone should know anything about wine. But if you're listing,
if it's your job, you should.
Yeah. If you're listing something as a first growth, and my big thing is you can never lie to people. If you're not sure, okay, so if you've got a weird wine that's got a grape and this, I will put red blend, for example. Yep. So you can put red blend, and then you can go, well, from what I've heard, it's got a bit of this, bit of that, bit of that. But if you're claiming something that is a hallmark and a standard of what it is, if you'll sell a bottle of Krug 1996 and you knowingly turn up at the table with a bottle of Krug non-vintage, that is bad sommeliering.
Totally agree.
People are moving on to wine 6.
Okay.
Are they?
Sorry, we've got a bit of a...
Have they been enticed to do so?
They have.
Okay.
And they're enjoying it.
Oh, they're in. Right, okay. This one's got a Vina lock in it, so I can get that out quickly. Right, so, get the wine in your glass. I'm prepared to be amazed, because usually at this point of the day, Mr. Alex Taylor would do 5 minutes of winemaking, but he will not do 5 minutes of winemaking, so I shall do 5 minutes of what the hell is a dessert wine? Or I might do 3 minutes, because people are drinking their entice. So, dessert wine it doesn't get enough love, because people go, I don't like sweet. but they're tucking into a slice of chocolate
Everybody
cake.
likes sweet.
People go, oh, I only like dry things to drink, but you've just had a rum and coke at the bar. But for some reason, there's this little bit with wine that people think that dry wine is the sharp thing to drink, and sweet wine is a bit uncouth and whatever. And that is absolutely wrong. It's not very often in wine I tell something that someone is wrong, but this is absolutely wrong. But not all dessert wines or sweet wines are created equally. So, let's start from the start. There's three. Basically, to make a dessert wine, you need to keep sugar in your wine. There needs to be sugar at the end because sugar is what makes it sweet. Nice and easy, everybody's got that. 3 places that you can add sweetness to this wine. You can either add it at the very end, which is very rare, but that generally happens in sherry. They're not allowed to add sugar because that's against the rules, but you can add grape must or another sweet liquid. So you'll take things like so to make a cream sherry, for example, they'll take a dry sherry and they'll add what's called PX, which is a very, very Jimenez, which is a very, very sweet sherry that you go, do I drink this or do I pour it on my pancakes? So they'll blend that. So that's one way to do it. The second way is you can keep the sugar by stopping fermentation. So when we make a wine, we take grapes, which have the sugar in. We add yeast, they react. The yeast eats the sugar and creates carbon dioxide and alcohol. Okay, so if we stop the yeast, it doesn't eat any more sugar. So we can stop it 2 ways.
Kill it. Kill it with fire. Not with fire.
We can kill it with fire, and then you get a boiled wine or a mulled wine potentially, but we don't want any of that.
No, we certainly don't.
We can either filter the yeast out, and that will leave us with a sweet wine with lower alcohol. So that's where we get our things like our white Zinfandels and things like that, just so the yeast gets filtered out. Or yeast will really only work to about 15% alcohol. And once it goes past that, it goes, I'm going to die now. So what people will do is they will add grape brandy to a product. And the most famous thing that does that is probably port. So we do that and we kill the yeast by taking over 15% with the grape brandy and therefore leaving the sugar behind. So that's what we call a fortified wine. And the other way is making sure you have enough sugar at the beginning. So like every good story, there's a beginning, a middle and an end. And there's a few ways to do that. We've got what's called late harvest or drying of the grapes. So late harvest is you'll leave it on the vine longer than you usually would. So by the name, late harvest, you harvest it later.
It's clever that, isn't it?
Smart that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's there, and they'll shrivel up and they'll raisin up, and they will lose water, therefore concentrating the sugar.
They become like a little bag of sugar is what they become, isn't it?
Yeah, little raisin on the vine. So concentrating the sugar, losing the water. Sometimes they'll pick them earlier and then they'll put them on a straw mat and dry them out.
Passimento.
Losing the water, concentrating the sugar. And then they make them into wine. So therefore we get lots of sugar, not lots of water.
Could you, and I'm not saying you could, but could you, like pick your grapes and then put them in a massive freezer, like the kind like Boris Johnson might hide in?
Relax, we've not got...
Could you just I've got 4 tons of Bacchus. What shall I do with this? And find the freezer the size of the planet and then go...
He needs to relax. We're not got to that.
Oh, sorry.
He's jumping the bloody gun, isn't he?
I do that all the time. Sorry.
So the other way we can make a dessert wine by concentrating is a thing called noble rot or botrytis, which sounds delicious. They little mold and fungus grow on the outside of the grape. It weakens the grape, therefore the water can evaporate out easier and concentrate the sugar. So we are reducing water, concentrating sugar to make a sweeter wine. Noble rot doesn't sound great. Let your grapes
the word rot doesn't sound good, does it?
But this is you need a certain set of conditions to happen. You need it to be cool and misty in the morning, so you get this rot onset. But then you need a breeze through in a warm afternoon to kind of blow that away. So only the noble rot will set in, and not other things like grey rot and shit.
So noble rot, we're kind of thinking Sautern, Coteau de Leon,
exactly.
Beerenauslese, Trockenbeerenauslese in Germany.
Absolutely. So, and then the final way to create your intensity of sweetness at the beginning is what is known as an ice wine, or I had this written down as an ice wine or an ice wine, but it's not really useful for me to say that. So you've got ice wine, EIS. Wine, as in the German, and then ice wine.
Das ist Nummerwein. Oh no, that was another callback. Yeah, sorry.
So, Generally, if you look at Germany or Canada, they make these ice wines where you have to go out in the middle of the night. It's got to be, depending which country, around minus 10 degrees in the middle of the night, and you go out and you hand pick with these special gloves on, and then you've got to get it back to the winery really quick, press it, because while it's frozen, the sugar comes out, the water stays behind. There's a theme here of get the sugar out, get rid of the water.
It's all getting sugar, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. So those wines can be very, very, very expensive because it's very labour intensive. You can only do it at a certain time. And I think it might have been, it was either 2018 or 2019, Germany made no ice wine.
I think
because through the entire vintage, it never dropped below the legal temperature to be allowed to make an ice wine.
It's almost like there's climate change.
It is.
Almost.
Anyway, sorry, carry on. I'm just going to change thought.
If you're not in Germany and you're not in Canada, and you were perhaps in England, where it doesn't generally get that cold, how potentially could you get your grapes that cold?
That's the thing.
amazing.
I think what you could do is you could pick 4 tons of Bacchus and go, give me a massive freezer.
See?
Like the kind Boris Johnson would hide in. And then you go and put that...
We've done this before. It's like Bacchus to the future.
It's like us the Rhones. Where we're going, we don't need Rhones. This is heavy. What were the other quotes?
Oh, that's my brother.
Hey! Get the Everleys in here.
Look at the quote.
Yeah.
It's like, that would be an ecumenical man.
It would indeed. I agree.
So, phenomenal tasting notes. So,
Ripe melon.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about this wine and Hattingley Valley and the likes of that while I look at tasting notes?
Yeah, so Hattingley Valley, they're down near Winchester is where they're based. They were planted in 2008 by Simon Robson, owned the estate. And the land had never been used for grapes before. It had only been used for sort of grazing cattle. And Simon Robson had some kind of breakdown and went, let's start a winery, because that's the only way you start a winery, let's be honest. And he effectively started from scratch, and he met up with Emma Rice, who's one of this country's very best winemakers, and she'd just come through the very first lot of people who qualified through Plumpton. Emma Rice, I believe that when she goes to sleep, she uses a pilau. Thank you very much.
Everyone's logging
and essentially, Simon Robson gave Emma Rice his checkbook and said, basically, build me and construct a winery, which they've done. And Hattingley, I think if you, just because there was kind of mention of first growth wines, if you were to kind of draw up a list of like 5 or 6 first growth English wine producers, I think Hattingley would be amongst that crowd, sitting at the very top in terms of quality and perception and prestige and so on and so forth. And I can't remember the first vintage they made this, but somebody basically went, well, I think it was when Jacob Ledley was there, I believe, who obviously went on to start Black Chalk, and he said, why don't we do this? Why don't we get Bacchus? If we can get it as an ice wine, brilliant. If not, let's put it in a big freezer. And they've done it, and I think this might be the 3rd or 4th release of it. They've not made many. It's made in very, very small quantities, because obviously, as Jamie was saying, it's labour intensive, and then the fact that you've got a huge amount of fruit sitting in a freezer, it sits at minus 18 for a month, and then it's very, very softly pressed, so it comes out at 10% alcohol. And you can do this with Bacchus, because I can't read that out on air. I don't know. Can I? I don't know what the regulations are. Are Ofcom watching this? Probably not, because I'm on it. I doubt it. But Bacchus, you can do it. So Bacchus is sort of broadly related to Riesling in a way, and it's got that acidity, which means it's the kind of grape that you can make a sweet wine with. Hattingley, obviously famous for their sparkling wines, of course. Who isn't? But not many producers make sweet wines here. You mentioned Ferg makes a late harvest Chardonnay at Heath, which is immense. But this Entice, I think, is low, and it's some great tasting notes coming out. Ecumenical once again.
Absolutely. What I'm happy with tonight is that we've tried some cool stuff. We've found some nice people who are making great wines that you can make this your new place to go. How are you doing in the chat, Mr. Taylor?
So Ian wants them all, and he wants them now.
Ian,
which is good.
Top man.
Top man.
Is that which Ian's that? Is that Ian W or Ian B?
Yeah, exactly.
Ian 72B.
Ian Russell.
Oh, we've got another Ian.
We have a question. Why are there not more Rieslings made in England?
I think the long and short of that is it's a bit too wet. So, generally speaking.
2 lines. I agree with that, but also it doesn't ripen very well. And it sounds a strange thing because you hear about Austria and Germany making world-class Rieslings. That's a bit further north and it's a little bit colder. But what it comes down to is rivers and photosynthesis. So here, the sunshine comes down, hits the grapes, hits the ground, gone away. When we go into Germany and Austria, everything is, you go to Austria, it's all on the Danube. When we talk about German, and we're doing Germany next month. Look at that.
So das ist Nummerwein. That's the third
time. It's all
time.
based on these rivers and these hot slopes. So the sun comes in, bit of photosynthesis on the way down, hits the river, reflects, comes back up. Bit of photosynthesis on the way back up.
Double shift photosynthesis.
Double shift photosynthesis.
My favourite kind of photosynthesis.
Which allows to get the ripeness of the grape.
I'll drop in an anecdote there. So I was in the Moselle in March a couple of years ago, you're still in spring. And it was it was cool, so you had to wear a jacket or a jumper or something. And we were on the banks of the Moselle. We were I can't remember which vineyard we were in now, and that's going to really annoy me that I can't remember. We were in one of the vineyards. I can't remember which one it is, and it's going to really, really irritate me. But
we'll send out an email.
Yeah, I'll remind you. When we were at the bottom of the slope by the river. Cool. We got up right to the top of the slope, up where the slate was. And the heat that was being reflected off the river was baking. And this was March, like peeling off jumpers and jackets and undoing your top button of your shirt. The difference that makes that water reflection is phenomenal.
Oh, so I've got an interesting question for everyone in the chat before we
Gewürzgarten, that's where I was. Anyway, sorry.
Lee's does anybody want a song today? We didn't ask.
A song? I haven't prepared anything.
I know you haven't. That's
literally.
For what? For Europe?
No, we're not singing Three Lions. Oh my god!
I don't know how to play that.
Anyway, I think Taylor's going to come over because I'm not going to sing. Are you going to sing?
Well, should we find out who the wines of the night were?
Well, why don't we put the poll up so everyone can put their wines of the night in? Then you can come and sing, and then we'll finalise any final questions. Let everyone know what's going on next month.
Sounds good.
Okay, get the Poly V up, get your final wines in, and. Taylor, sing us a song. Taylor, sing us a song. He's hiding, isn't he?
He is. Are you I've literally not prepared anything?
I'm really not prepared. Do you want my microphone?
That sounds good.
I know I sound good, but having my microphone.
I'm going to have to, if you pop the lyrics on the table, because I'm not going to know where I am. All right.
Bye. I'm leaving.
I'll have to sit here.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry about this. It's a bit of a random affair. There we go. So while you're answering the questions, we're going to sing you a little song that apparently we've written, and obviously it's Oasis again. So sorry about
people are going to assume the only songs I can play are Oasis. That's because basically all Oasis songs consist of the same three chords.
They do,
just in a different order.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Apparently there's a fourth chord. I've never learned it in 20 years. But okay, I'll
let's give it a go while you get your answer.
I'll try not to make a mess of this.
Okay. Today is gonna be the day that you're gonna drink English wine. By now you should have realized the things we make here are fine. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about English wine. In Kent, the word is in the vines and the secret in the glass is out. I'm sure you've drunk some grapes before and you really don't have a doubt. I don't believe that anybody makes it the way we do English Pinot. And all the wines we have to drink are blinding, and all the glasses we have drank are shining. There are many wines that I would like to trade to you, I don't know how. Cause maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you taste wonderful.
for that.
That's quite enough.
I like the reworking of the lyrics, though.
You can go back over there now and find out what wines people like.
Yeah, sounds good. Right, well, grab it back.
Okay, so. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that.
Wine prices.
Hang on, the police have just turned up. Oh, right.
No, that
Not
was
as in Sting,
as
as in the
Oasis.
actual police. But
So,
anyway.
let's have a little look at what people liked. Let's have a little look at what the prices were this evening. So, we can see, English wine does sometimes jump a little bit in price, but offers, I think, phenomenal quality as to what's going on. So, as we pull up the Poly V and find out what the favourite wines of the night were.
Do you want the prices first?
Yeah, let's have the prices first.
Have a bit
I'll
of
put
pricing.
the prices up then.
Okay. Oh my god, why can't I do these? Prices transition.
There we are.
So, prices.
So here's the prices. You can find them all on the Online Wine Tasting Club website. There's the little link to them, so you can get in, buy them, drink them, have fun with them. Absolutely fantastic. So before these come up, what do you think the wine of the night might have been?
Oh, what do I think? Oh, I do love a suitcase Pinot. It's because you've got a great dessert wine and then, some very different whites, but I do love the suitcase Pinot. Suitcase Pinot is immense.
I think my favourite wine of the night, I'm torn between the Entice because I love a dessert wine, but I'm going to put my numbers on the Oastbrook.
That's good thinking.
Oh! Okay.
Look at this.
I don't know how to get this on the screen.
I can read it though. Put it back to full screen and I'll read it.
Let's try.
Here we go. We will momentarily get you the results of this vital poll.
Or not.
Or not.
Okay. Put it back full screen.
Okay. Our producer's just having a stroke or something.
Okay.
So
it is a tie, and it obviously shows great taste from me because it's 34% of the vote to both the ice wine and the.
Everybody likes something sweet, don't they?
Exactly.
It's got some sugar in it. Oh.
But that kind of shows how great. Oh, it's changing again.
Oh,
there's more going in. Just change. It's changing. It's still moving.
What is going on here?
What are you doing? So anyway.
But it's still equal.
So it looks like the Entice and the Oastbrook Pinot Gris are our wines of the night. Followed by the Balfour.
Does that mean?
And then we've got the other wines in there. So
does that mean the producers have to have a fight now to work out who's the winner?
No, not at all. Not at all. So thank you hugely for joining us. Next month on our Discoverers level, we're doing the wines of Germany. For our Adventurers level, we are doing, believe it or not, the 31 Days of German Riesling. I've already got my T-shirt, so there we go. 31 Rieslings to be happy. Who doesn't love a good pun?
But hit me with your Riesling stuff.
As always. You know what? If you're over there, you got to be quiet, yeah?
Sorry.
No, not you. You're fine. It's over there. But as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And next month, I know we've gone umming and ahhing with pack sizes. I'm going to throw it out there just so everybody knows. All the packs are moving up to 100ml of wine per pack. So there's more wine for the same price because we love you all dearly going forward. Riesling next month. And then going into August, we're going to be doing Argentina and we're going to be doing all things Pinot. To be decided, but that will not just be Pinot Noir. It'll be Pinot Noir, Gris, Blanc, Taj. No,
there's no need for that.
But it's been an absolute pleasure. Huge thanks to Lee for coming on. He's, as I said, Wineman147 if you want to follow him on Instagram or Twitter. I do, but you listen to me talk about wine, so you know what my taste is like.
If you want to feel better about your own life, just take a look at mine through the medium of social media. Guarantee you'll feel better.
Dive in, sign up. If you if you've got a friend who you think would like to join us, give us a shout. We love you all dearly. Alex is hanging out in the chat, but when he finishes hanging out in the chat, I probably think it's about time to roll credits.
Yeah. Apologies if you wanted to actually watch Alex Taylor, which I'm sure you didn't, and instead you got me, a very poor substitute.
Okay, at that point, roll credits.
Yeah. Cheers.